Hello and welcome to the Stand Up for the Story podcast. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Nicky O'Malley. Nicky is the co-founder of 30 by 30 UK, co-founder of Changebox and founder of Nature's Voice and We Flourish. Nicky, welcome to the Stand Up for the Story podcast.
Hey Rachel, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you.
Yes.
So what is the story that you're here to stand up for?
So I'm here to stand up for a new story of leadership, a new story of business leadership, one that is more connected to nature, nature-driven, heart-led, and also, interestingly, integrates AI for good and tech for good, because that's basically a summary of the different spaces and areas of my work. And I think it's a really impactful combo. So that's what I'm here to stand up for with you today.
Great. And obviously we met because I heard of your work representing nature on boards. So I think that's really exciting and look forward to digging into that as we go along. If you think about in terms of leadership and those areas that you've been talking about, what's wrong with the current story and how is that showing up in ways that are broken, maybe toxic?
Yeah, speaking to that nature on the board piece a little bit, I've been studying with the Nature Governance Agency and the Earth Law Centre for the last year and a bit. And my career, I've done a decade or so in nature and conservation and biodiversity. And I guess what has really come through for me in my work with NGOs, where I've been the representative interacting with business leaders within corporate businesses and brands, and then also my own work as an entrepreneur and founder as well, from where I'm sitting, a lot of leadership has become completely disassociated from life itself, disassociated from people, disassociated from the heart, disassociated from effectively the systems within which we operate. When you speak to business leaders separately, one-on-one, in the evening, at the weekend, in the park with their kids, they appreciate the trees around them, the nature around them, the community services that they and their families are benefiting from. But it's almost sometimes when you put somebody in a boardroom or you put somebody in a corporate office and it's like all of those things turn off.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're only thinking about spreadsheets and KPIs and metrics and year-on-year financial growth and what did we do last March because it's nearly April and we need to have beaten that this year. And actually what I'm all about is trying to reimagine this new story of leadership that connects back to what's real and connects back to what's important for us now, but also for future generations. I've very much got that future legacy piece to my work as well.
That's amazing. That is a really powerful way of looking at it. How so many leaders will almost leave who they really are at the door when they come into work in the morning.
That's how it feels. To me, that's what I've observed, I think. And actually, particularly when you're on the end of the charities, which I have been for many years as part of my career. I've worked brand side, agency side, charity side. So I've come at this from all different angles. And often when you're coming in as one of the charity bods, for example, with a really beautiful, this could really save some people, or this could really save the world. And you go in thinking, everybody's going to love this. Everybody's going to throw money at this because this is really going to make change. And then you go in and it actually doesn't necessarily resonate with people and you just can't understand why. But I think it's because, as I say, that disassociation and people have almost a mindset that they're in and it's tradition almost. It's where we've been.
We're almost seeing the extremes of that in some of the global leadership and how countries are being treated like businesses. And I feel at the moment there is this absurdly toxic version of leadership that we're seeing play out.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I think it's definitely something we observe in society at various levels, political levels, corporate levels. We also see some really beautiful, fantastic examples. I think it was the Norwegian Prime Minister who was a woman during COVID. And when everybody else was implementing lockdowns, what she did was she started a series of TV updates specifically for the children of Norway. And she spoke to the children of Norway every day on TV to reassure them that this is a difficult thing that's happening, and I want to make sure you're okay, and I want to answer your questions, and I'm in charge, and I've got this, and I'm reassuring you that this is okay, coming at it from what's real. And it was just, to me, it's just mind blowing. For me, that's leadership. That's leadership. And it's not necessarily, I'm not just representing her as the female lead being the answer. This isn't about a feminine, masculine thing. This is about a connection to humanity, I think, a connection to what's human and what's real and what's important.
Wow. So what was your personal aha around changing this story?
Yes, well, I guess, as I say, sort of observing that disassociation from the importance of life. I think I've had a few moments in my career, actually, now I look back at them, certainly in the more corporate times of my career, when I have been asked by more senior people. When I remember I was about 25, and I was put on a director fast track, and they were picking some young people and put me onto this fast track, and they said, Nicky, we'd like to offer you this opportunity. It's going to be really important for you, but you're going to need to really stop smiling, and you're going to need to stop being so friendly, because people aren't going to take you seriously. You're way too informal, you're way too friendly and happy. It was a really big thing for me, and I remember really struggling with that. And in the end, I left that company because I thought, actually, this isn't me. And I went off and travelled around Australia and swam with whales for a while and hung out on beaches to get over it. But then I guess it's that, and then it's a period of getting burnt out through working so hard and not being connected to nature and not being connected to myself and my truth. So yeah, I think there's been a few aha moments, potentially a couple that I haven't listened to as much as I should have done.
Yeah.
But definitely now that's the way I live. I live and work in a very nature connected, heart driven way. And I just would really struggle to behave in any other way than that now. And I take me as you find me. That's how I represent myself. And hopefully I can have some impact on the world in that way that I feel comfortable with.
How does that look in terms of living in a very nature-based way?
I guess I have what some people might constitute quite an unusual daily routine. I do walk every morning and I go out and meditate, and I'm barefoot sitting on the grass meditating every day. Now that is in the snow. I connect to nature every day regardless of what the weather is doing. I swim outdoors. I've got lovely memories of swimming up and down outdoors in the snow and having snowflakes landing on my eyelashes. It sounds really cheesy, but it was actually quite a romantic moment. Bloody freezing, but a very romantic moment. So for me, it's almost the nature connection time is my priority.
Yeah.
And it's non-negotiable for me, actually, to have those moments, because it just keeps me connected and keeps things real for me, Rachel.
Yeah. I feel very similar, actually. I've got very similar routines around meditation and walking the dog in the morning and getting in the cold water, but not every day.
Doesn't it make a humongous difference?
Massive.
It makes a massive difference.
When it comes to the story of leadership, what is the real problem here?
So I'd say it comes back to this detachment from life itself, and actually remembering that when we go to work, we don't become other than ourselves, and actually bringing our real selves to work, which I know is quite a cheesy sentence, but actually we're still the daughters, the sisters, the husbands, the brothers, the parents of who we are, and the things that we really care about. I really would like to remind people to bring those emotions into a work context, because when we ignore the wisdom of that, and when we ignore what we're truly passionate about, we lose sight of our connection to the natural world and to ourselves as people.
Yeah.
So when it comes back to some of the questions I like to ask leaders is, for example, what breaks your heart? Which is a very difficult question to ask at work, because people don't want to go there. So you have to do a bit of facilitation to get people to be comfortable in that space from the beginning. But it's something that one of my absolute heroes, Scylla Elworthy, who I learnt about through the Women Leading Change programme that I did with Cambridge University, she has ever since been my absolute hero. She's been nominated for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes. I believe she's 81 years old now. She's an absolutely fantastic woman, and she talks about what breaks your heart as a person, as a human, and let's connect as humans. She very much works in war zones, and she's a peace negotiator.
Right.
So she knows how to connect people back to themselves. And what I'm interested in doing is trying to bring quite a bit of that human connection as well as nature connection into the business environment.
Yeah.
Because I think then we can really mobilize and envision a beautiful future. We've got AI giving us so much potential and reducing the cost of innovation so hugely now that really there's little excuses for all of us to bring to life a lot of the ideas that lots of people have to make some real change.
Yeah.
But what we must do is really make that change from a place of human, heart-centered connection with future generations in mind. I'm not against people making money, but I would like there to be a long-termism here rather than a short-termism.
Yeah.
And the concept of the 7 generations principle, learning from indigenous wisdom, where we make decisions based on how this will affect 7 generations ahead of us, is part of what I'm trying to work on now as well, which is very, very exciting.
It's very interesting because I'm in the process of creating an AI version of Brand New Story to put in the hands of writers and copywriters and content creators. It's a tool that it needs the human input first because we are filling the world with content. I read somewhere that every time we ask ChatGPT or whatever a question, it's the equivalent of a bottle of water in terms of the cooling systems, the sustainability cost to that with the data centers.
Yes.
And I think we've got to this thing with AI where people are asking it anything and just nonsensical stuff as well. But I think it's about what we put into it is what we're going to get out of it. So like you said, let's use it for good. Let's put wisdom in. Let's put kindness in. Let's put all of those positive things in.
And it's important about who is, in inverted commas, feeding it information.
Yeah.
Because actually, if those of us that have got this longer term perspective and are more connected to nature and are more connected to humanity and looking after future generations, which by default may mean the majority women. I'm part of an organisation called She Shapes AI, for example, who are actively trying to get more women into this space because we really need female voices helping to train the AI, because otherwise it's coming out with a very one-sided situation, one-sided perspective. For the point of representation, again, it's not just masculine and feminine, it's actually a diversity of voice, a diversity of perspectives, regions. We need indigenous wisdom in there. We need people of all ages in there.
Yeah.
There's lots of people all around the world doing very powerful, positive things. But you're absolutely right. We also need to think about the usage element and the carbon footprint element of the usage of data centers and AI. And the previous NGO that I worked for, we literally did whole presentations and discussions on that piece alone. But at the same time, it's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because I thought that when I started to move into this space, I thought working in climate and nature, are people going to say to me, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that because it's got such a heavy footprint? And I'm not negating any of that perspective. But to enable humongous impact, if we can help humanity to shift in a certain direction with this power, I think it's almost incumbent on us to jump into this game and not allow the AI game to be driven by people with short-term perspectives.
Absolutely.
Because that is where we're going to get into big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that same thing where I was feeling guilty for all the reasons you just said. And a friend of mine said to me, just do it. It needs that input. It needs that voice. It needs that feminine, not women, but that feminine qualities.
I call it right brain, which again is inspired by my absolute hero, Scilla Elworthy. She talks about right brain intelligence as well, which I think is a fantastic way to put it. And I agree with her. We're not trying to make this a gender conversation.
Not at all.
And we're not trying to say that men can't be connected to their hearts, thinking about future generations, making positive decisions for communities. Absolutely. So I talk about it as right brain thinking, meaning more creative, more imagineering, visioning, because let's face it, we can't get ourselves out of this through the same thinking that got us into it.
No.
And it's that sort of that working in the environmental and nature space, it's been pushed very much down a compliance alleyway, and it really gets on my nerves because I'm not a compliance person. I'm the opposite. I've got the opposite brain. My brain really can't handle a lot of those concepts. And to put nature and planet into a tick box exercise really upsets me, because actually somebody said to me recently, nobody's done their best ever work for compliance reasons.
Yeah.
What we need people is to come out of the area of compliance and actually say, let's just get our shoes off. And I know that's the hippie. I'm such a hippie, but the hippie in me would just get our shoes off, get barefoot, get into nature, remind ourselves of who we are and what we love about the planet. And
Yeah.
from that space, let's imagine how we want to support nature. And part of what I'm doing with co-founding 30 by 30 UK is helping to secure 30% of land and sea for nature by 2030. Now, that's a big, ambitious goal. We aren't going to do it by talking to people about compliance. We aren't going to do it by talking to people about tick boxes. We're going to do it by talking to people about their love of nature and talking to brands and senior people within brands, not just senior people from top and bottom, all across the organizations, within businesses and brands, to emotively get connected to what nature needs us to do. And then we collectively jump in behind that. We're calling it Nature's Moonshot. And we're saying we've got 5 extraordinary years for nature. And we're already part way through the first year of those 5 extraordinary years. So time is ticking. And we aren't going to do that from here. We'll do it from here. That's my view on it, Rachel.
Yeah, I totally agree. Have you read Charles Eisenstein, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible? It was very influential with Brand New Story.
Well, this is where you are. This is why you and I connected so easily when we started chatting before, because I love the work that you're doing and talking about, this is what I'm talking about with right brain intelligence. It's about rewriting the story of humanity, rewriting the story of our future.
Yeah.
Because the thing that upsets me most right now is when people sit and say, it's already gone too far, there's nothing we can do, and we just give up, we'll just roll over thinking. People could look at me and think I'm utterly bonkers for not having that pessimistic viewpoint. I remain happily bonkers in the optimistic view that we can imagine something better and we can imagine something beautiful, which is why I talk about my new business that I've launched recently, which is We Flourish, because I'm talking about a future where we as a planet and as humanity can flourish in the context of having AI integrated in what we're doing, in the context of having much smaller carbon footprints, in the context of all the things that we're dealing with. But I think we can envisage something really beautiful to look forward to, Rachel, for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of future generations.
And for me, we have thousands of stories that we need to disrupt and change and bring new stories based on that right brain and based in the heart and love. And when we do that, the world can just transform. It's
powerful.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's really powerful. It's possible and it's powerful. Yeah. And I think it's okay to take that on the chin sometimes, of the people looking at people with a positive outlook and just saying, this is bananas. There's so much negativity in the world. There is. And yes, it can weigh very heavy, or we can find some way in our own little rituals and our own little moments of connection where we connect back to what's important and the bigger picture of our lives as a lifespan and our lives as part of a legacy of what we're leaving for other people. That's where I try to go. Whenever things feel too much, I try to reverse out and go into much longer timelines of thinking. And when you're up at the much longer timeline perspective, things tend to feel a little bit easier and a little bit more positive.
Yeah, totally. And I think when you spend that time in nature and when you sit in nature and you talk to nature, it talks back.
She does. It does. She does. However you want to describe it. Absolutely. And it's that meditation. I think meditation is super powerful. About 6 years or so ago, I went on a mindfulness course, and I've got to say it was absolutely life-changing for me, and it started a whole lifestyle for me. I've since become a yoga teacher. I'm now a mindfulness coach. I'm now a meditation coach, and I just wouldn't live without it.
Yeah.
And it all started from the course that I went to because I was utterly burnt out at the end of my tether as a mum and as a woman, and it really saved me.
In terms of leaders now, what can they do to change the story for them?
Reconnecting to what's real outside of spreadsheets and screens. So getting out of the office, I think, is really important. And something that I like to do with people is retreats for leaders and taking people out into nature. whether that be the leaders, but also anyone within the organisations coming out and getting your wellies on and getting into stuff. When I worked for the RSPB, we did lots of employee engagement, getting people out planting trees and working on nature reserves. And people just come alive, and it's a real leveller. And you get the CEO working alongside people that they would never otherwise talk to, and everybody's digging holes and planting trees together. So I would say get out of the day-to-day, look at the sky, actually physically connect your body and your mind to nature, and physically find the time, force the time, actually, I would even go so far as to say, away from screens and outside of air-conditioned offices, and just really connect with what's real, with what was here before and what will be hereafter. And to be in connection with trees, for example, or nature in general that has been here before us and will be here after us is such a humbling experience. And I've become one of those real full-blown hippie weirdos now that stands holding onto trees in parks. But I love it. And I love the way people walk past me and they strangely look at me, but at the same time, they also want to do it because
So
it's really powerful.
what's the most powerful experience you've had with a tree?
Oh, I've spent lots of time with trees. I don't know if I could pick one. I do lots of, I'm really going into it here. I do actually lots of hippie dancing. I do dancing in the woods with some of my friends sometimes, and we dance around in the woods barefoot with the trees. I've gone full-blown hippie style, Rachel, basically. There's a side of me that does all of that.
I'm the same. There's an ash wood near us, and I walk there most days with the dog.
Yeah.
And I started having conversations with the ash trees, and it was incredible. And last year, when I was meditating, my uncle was very poorly. Someone had gone on and sprayed orange dots on all of the ash trees because dieback has hit the woods. And in my meditation, there was a clearing, and I just saw one ash tree with an orange dot on it. I feel I've not shared this with anybody.
That got me.
And my uncle was very poorly at the time. And I had this feeling that the trees on the outside were the ancestors.
Yeah.
And then he passed away about a week later. And I felt like he was that ash tree. And it was incredible. Very
It's so
powerful.
powerful. And actually, whether we can intellectualize these things and people could say, there's no way that could be happening, Rachel, or whatever. But actually, what it does do, however you want to perceive what's happening and how woo-woo you may or may not want to go with it, you're taking quiet time to connect to yourself and what's real for you outside of screens, outside of technology, outside of what 2025 looks like. And that, for me, is incredibly powerful. So in terms of what business leaders can do and how, I would say, just to get a little taste of that magic, and you don't have to turn into the full-blown hippie like you and I, although it's fun and I'd heavily recommend it. But I think bringing a little bit of that magic into business is just very powerful. And for me, I believe that's where the future of leadership is going. I think it does integrate this magic. I think we need more magic. We need more magic in our lives. And the magic comes from nature. And it comes from what's real and what it really means to be human. That's the fun bit. That's the magic.
And it does. I think there's been such a relationship with nature of just taking that resource, nature as a resource thing, the extractive, not that two-way relationship. And I have gone into those woods and made really what I thought were difficult decisions about my business in a non-emotional way, because nature's shown me something and I've been able to deal with it in a much more graceful manner.
That's
if
beautiful.
that makes sense.
No, that's gorgeous. That's beautiful to hear. And from a nature governance perspective, from a nature on the board perspective, it can be very practical. You can physically have a representative, a human representative, sitting on your board as a proxy for nature and speaking for nature. Now, that doesn't have to sound as woo-woo as it could be construed. You just have somebody in the room thinking, okay, if we actually take that step, let's just put ourselves into the shoes of nature for a moment. What impact does that have on the waterways, on nature around us? What impact does that have right now and into the future? And it's just, somebody's just in the room asking that question, which fundamentally, that's basically the nub of what's going on with it. And it's so important. Yeah, it's massively oversimplifying it. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's almost the nub of it. And I think when you're in boardrooms, you've got somebody in there representing finance. You've got somebody in there representing customer services. You've got somebody in there representing marketing. You do need somebody in there representing the natural world. Otherwise, nobody's bringing that perspective to the decision-making table.
It's
The
really
power that I see, the changes that I see happening when somebody is even making that representation. And some people even do it with an empty chair.
yeah.
They don't even have a proxy for nature, but they have an empty chair just to remind everybody else in there to say, hold on, there's somebody here who can't speak for themselves, who we need to speak for. It's an incredibly powerful decision-making tool, and I enjoy being part of it. I enjoy being one of the people that advocates for it. And it's something that I love to talk about, and I go about the world talking about a lot.
About a year or two ago, there was an advert with Apple where they had nature in the boardroom.
Yeah.
Good or nature washing?
That was a difficult one. And again, there was a broad range of perspectives that Mother Nature came in, didn't she? And gave her almost like she was the head teacher and gave her assessment of what they've been doing.
Yeah.
Now, it's a tricky one because she came in with a firm perspective. And I liked the way that she came in with reverence and she was respected and everybody straightened their shirts up and thought, oh God, here she comes, as if we better take notice. I like that creative visualization of the whole concept. But yes, it can be perceived to make out like you're listening to Mother Nature. You have to be very careful because then there's scrutiny on a lot of the decisions that you're making. But the whole worries around greenwashing and the fear of the fear of progress because they're seeking perfection, progress over perfection.
Yes.
I think really hamstrings businesses. And it's one of the most upsetting things that I see right now as somebody that works for positive progress, that people want to do good, but they have a fear of being perceived as not being good enough. So they end up doing literally nothing.
That's a really important point. Yeah.
It's really upsetting for those of us that are trying to bring people with us in terms of movement building. People will say, well, if I can't do it perfectly, or if my business isn't doing 100% of things perfectly, then it's not worth us trying to do 50-60% because we'll just be shot down. Now, we as a society and as the press and as a media and as commentators in the space need to think carefully about what that's saying to people. And I think we need to encourage progress and not put the fear into people for trying.
Yeah.
Because this is a collective effort.
And I think it comes back to that authenticity and that being honest about where you are on the journey, that you're not perfect, but actually this is where you're hoping to head, because the whole idea is the story evolves. You are where you are and you're working towards something. Whenever we meet a hero in a story, they're not the hero. I talk about it a lot. Harry Potter's under the stairs. He's not the wizard. And we are where we are when we start.
And people overcome adversity, and that's the story arc, isn't it? And actually there's some fantastic examples of brands. Interface is a huge one, where they had a completely different business model and they completely turned it around, and now they're perceived as one of the most sustainable businesses on the planet, and they do fantastic things. They're a real case study of regenerative business. But for the beginning of for a long time in that story, they could have been completely frozen because of how things were before. So actually they, for me, are a really good case study of how you make that shift. It's that transition, as you say, Rach. You're moving from where you've been to where you're going, and on the way there's a transition. And what I don't want to do in terms of, as I say, movement building and mobilizing action is to have a setting of fear where people are, as I say, frozen. So I'm about trying to mobilize authentic progress.
Yeah.
And defend those people who are trying to make authentic progress, and myself try to make authentic progress. But putting yourself out in the world as somebody saying, I'm all about positive progress, you're definitely becoming a potential for people to shoot you down and say, you don't do everything 100% perfect. Well, none of us do. So we've got to get out there and say, we're trying our best here. And actually we need other people to try their best. And if we collectively all did, just imagine.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
I see that all the time with my old CEO at Ecotricity, where my last job that I worked at. He just comes in for it all the time.
Dale.
Yeah, and actually he's done so much that's created huge impact.
He's made huge impact, and he puts
Massive.
himself out there. He
Yeah,
really puts himself out there.
he
And
does.
this is what I learned. It's a whole process, which is why I think we as purposeful business people have to do the inner bit as well, because actually when you want to put yourself out there in the world, it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah. So what's the answers that you bring? How do you work with people?
How do I work with people? I've got various kind of hats that I wear. So
Yeah.
it depends on which hat I'm wearing. So I have co-founded 30 by 30 with my co-founder Elliot, who founded Ecology, and he and I have launched 30 by 30. So we're working with businesses to mobilize money to secure 30% of land and sea for nature by 2030. We're working with the conservation organisations across the country with that work. If anybody is interested in supporting nature in the UK, I would love to talk to them, because we're actively looking for businesses and brands that want to work with us and support that campaign. Outside of 30 by 30, as we've touched on, I do lots of nature governance work. So I talk about sitting on boards as the nature proxy. I present on that. I do workshops on that for businesses, and I talk to businesses about the future of business being nature-led and right brain intelligence-led as well. It's a fun and interesting situation that I'm in these days, Rachel, doing my own thing. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah, endlessly exciting, and I get to come and talk to lovely people like you and do these
No,
things.
and I feel excited talking to you as well.
And I guess the other piece that I do is I've co-founded a tech startup as well, an AI-powered tech startup, which is all about unlocking food security in the UK and dealing with poor diets and trying to nourish people across the UK, linking into the National Food Strategy and utilising the power of AI to help people across the country to access nourishing food, which is a humongous issue, which at foundational level is creating a massive array of issues up and down the country. So even though it sounds like a stretch for me as myself as well, actually, to think it's not nature and conservation, it's actually interwoven. It's systemic. The issues of our food system are systemically linked to our nature and planetary crises. From a systemic perspective, all these things are linked together, and weaving in the AI perspectives there is very important. So AI and tech is the other hat that I wear as a female founder. There aren't many of us, and there should be more of us. And I call for more women to become founders of businesses in general, but also founders of tech businesses, and jump in there and come and join in, because I go into these rooms with tech founders and I'm quite often the only woman in the room, and we just need more female voices and more diverse voices. Again, not just female, more diverse voices. We're setting the tone for the future here, so it's important.
Absolutely. So what does the brand new story of leadership look like?
The brand new story of leadership from my perspective is nature-led, heart-centered and AI integrated. There you go. So they're the three headline pieces that I would summarize. And as we've discussed today, it might be counterintuitive that those things come together. But from where I'm sitting, in the context of the systemic issues that we're dealing with, the potential that AI gives us, the requirement that nature and the planet has on us to take notice, I think we can't help but bring all those things together. And I think unless we mobilise those pieces of the puzzle all together at the same time, we aren't going to have the impact as urgently as we need it and at the scale that we need it. So it's about thinking systemically, pulling these pieces together, rocket powering the positive solutions and bringing all the voices together, I think, Rachel, for me.
What's the one thing that listeners can do right now to change the story of leadership in their life?
Bringing it down to the bare bones basic of the one thing you can do is put some time in to shut your laptop down and just go and be outside, and preferably just be silent for a moment and slow down and remember that there's a much bigger picture going on here.
Yeah.
And so that is the one thing I would recommend for people, if you can.
Yeah. So where can listeners go online to find out more about you and your work and all the organisations you're involved in?
So check me out on LinkedIn, Nicky O'Malley, and you'll find all of my various businesses, from We Flourish, 30 by 30 UK, Changebox, all the work that I do. It's all summarised on there. And I'd love to speak to anybody that's interested in having any chats with me.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for coming, and thank you for standing up for the story of leadership and nature.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. Lovely to be here.
If anything you've heard today has inspired you to want to create a brand new story for your company, please visit brandnewstory.co.uk to find out more. And to support the show, please can you hit that subscribe button, leave a review and share this episode with other pioneers in your network. And remember, keep pushing those boundaries, keep standing up for those stories, and I'll see you next time.